record our meeting. Hopefully everyone can see the screen there. But like I mentioned before, we are tackling penalty relief tonight, rules 17, 18, and 19. So we'll cover penalty areas, lost balls, balls out of bounds, and we will talk about unplayable balls as well. Also touching on some provisional ball stuff in rule 18. So a little bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about tonight. Here's our 3 rules we're going to outline, like we mentioned. All these rules, 17, 18, and 19, this all encompasses everything we talk about with penalty relief. Last week, we talked about rules 15 and 16 dealing with free relief. But this week is all about penalty relief. All of these relief options that encompass 17, 18, and 19, all of these are going to usually require 1 penalty stroke to proceed with any of these options. So a little bit of an overview of our first rule. We're going to tackle penalty areas, rule 17. We're going to talk about what is a penalty area with the definition of penalty area. And then there's 3 portions to rule 17 we'll talk about. We see the 3 subsections there. Options when our ball is in a penalty area, what happens when we play a ball from a penalty area, and then no relief for some other rules when our ball is in a penalty area. Once we have a ball in that area, we got to proceed with certain rules. So first up, the definition of a penalty area, what we're going to talk about here. We got to figure out what is a penalty area to begin with. As we may or may not already know, penalty areas are one of our specific areas of the course that we have. We have the general area, and then we have specific areas of the golf course. Other specific areas we may have already talked about are putting greens, bunkers, teeing areas. Those are all specific areas of the golf course that have their own rules that they deal with. Penalty areas are just one of those other rules that has a specific rule that deals with that area of the golf course. So all it is an area from which relief is allowed with a 1-stroke penalty if we have a ball that comes to rest there. If you had old rules knowledge prior to 2019, you may have known these areas. You might still know these areas as water hazards. Penalty areas is just a little bit more encompassing on what that area of the golf course actually is. There's some things that default to being a penalty area, whether they're marked or not. These things are all encompassed here on the screen. Any sea, ocean, lake, pond, river, ditch, drainage ditches, or any other open water courses that can be found on our golf course. All of these areas just default to being a penalty area, whether they have lines, stakes, or any other features defining them that as well. So anytime we see any of those things on a golf course, they're automatically going to be treated as a penalty area. Or they could just be any other part of the course the committee chooses to define as a penalty area. Since 2019, when the penalty areas came into place with the rules of golf, it gave a lot of leeway on to whether a committee can mark it as a penalty area or not. When we used to have water hazards prior to 2019 with rules 26 and 27, those things had a really strict definition of what could be a water hazard. It was usually something that contained water or was designed to contain water, like those things we mentioned on the previous slide. Once we changed the rules in 2019 and we gave this term, we changed this term penalty area, it gave committees a lot of leeway on what we can choose to define as a penalty area. Areas of high grass, thick trees, other things like that, the committee can choose to define these as penalty areas by either marking them with a red line, putting stakes around them, or defining them in some other way in their terms of the competition. But really anything now on the golf course, the committee can choose to make a penalty area. We have 2 different types of penalty areas, either yellow or red. One option or one of those penalty areas has 3 relief options. The other has 2. We get that extra relief option when we have a red penalty area. A lot of us are probably more familiar with red than we are with yellow, because since 2019, with that leeway of defining what a penalty area is, a lot of committees just define everything as red penalty areas. Not a lot of yellow penalty areas are used anymore. There still is an application to use yellow penalty areas. They still do serve their purpose here. in 2024 and beyond, but a lot of facilities and a lot of committees have just chosen to go with red for everything. Another change that came about in 2019 was when a penalty area has not been marked or the committee is not indicated as one or the other. Starting in 2019, we have been treating these as red penalty areas. Prior to 2019, they defaulted to yellow, but since 2019 into 2023, 2024, and going forward, we're going to treat unmarked penalty areas as red penalty areas. One important thing is the edge of the penalty area extends both up above the ground and down below it. So this means that anything below the ground inside that penalty area and anything above the ground inside that penalty area, we're going to treat as part of the penalty area, whether it's above, below, that the penalty area has some verticality to it. So what I like to think when we have these edges of the course that go up and down is that where that line or those stakes are on the ground, pretend there are glass windows going from that line or from those stakes above the ground and down below them. Anything on the other side of those glass windows or the penalty area side of those glass windows, that's part of the penalty area. Anything on the other side, we're going to treat as another part of the golf course. So just keep in mind that penalty areas do go up above the ground and down below it. And when we're defining penalty areas, we should define them by either stakes, lines, or other physical features. And we can see there that when stakes are used to define how we should do that, when lines are used, how they should be defining the penalty area. And if physical features are used, how the physical feature kind of defines that penalty area. Two things to take from this slide. I know it's a lot of text, but two things to take from this slide are when stakes or lines are used to define the penalty area, which most of the time, those are the two things that are defining the penalty area. When a stake or line is on the ground, the stake is inside the penalty area and the line itself is inside the penalty area. So it is, those two things are part of the penalty area themselves. Again, when we're using natural features, we're using that natural boundary where the ground slopes down to form where that water is being held. So that is going to be our natural feature to define the penalty area. When an open water course usually does not contain water, or a drainage ditch or a runoff area that's dry, the committee can then turn that as part of the general area. Again, that just goes with that leeway of the committee choosing to define what they want as part of the penalty area or not part of the penalty area. So the committee can also choose to take those things and turn them back into the general area if they so choose, if they so decide to choose to do so. Getting into the actual meat of our Rule 17 with ball in a penalty area, we have a few options for when a ball is in a penalty area. But first, we have to figure out when that ball is in that area of the golf course. So when any part of our ball either lies in or touches the ground inside the penalty area or anything else in the penalty area, or is above or below the edge of that penalty area, that's when we're going to treat the ball as being in the penalty area. So when we have a ball that is in the penalty area, that's in that area of the golf course, and the ball is in that area, so anything in 17 is now going to apply to our situation. Since we have a ball that's in that specific area of the golf course, this rule now applies to our situation. Now we can use any of those options within 17.1. The other thing with this is we can also choose to just play the ball as it lies. If it's a penalty area that's not been defined as a no-play zone, it's just a regular old red or yellow penalty area, we can choose to play the ball without penalty as it lies, just like we can in any other area of the golf course, just like we can in a bunker, from the general area, on the putting green. We can play the ball as it lies and not take that penalty stroke and just proceed that way. The other option would be to use one of our options for penalty area relief and go about it that way. There's also a chance for us to take relief for a ball that we haven't found it in a penalty area. It's not necessarily lost, but we haven't found it. But, and some of you may have heard this term before, we have either knowledge or virtual certainty that the ball is in the penalty area. So when we have knowledge or virtual certainty that the ball is in the penalty area, but we haven't found that ball, we still can take relief under some of our penalty relief rules and use some of those options under 17, even though we haven't found the ball yet. Key thing to know about that knowledge or virtual certainty standard. When we're proceeding under knowledge or virtual certainty that our ball is in a certain area of the golf course or it's in somewhere specific, what we're doing is we're reaching a certain standard to say that our ball this is what has happened to our golf ball. That knowledge of virtual certainty standard under the rules of golf is 95%. So when we haven't found our golf ball in a penalty area, but we are at least 95% sure that our ball is in the penalty area and there is nowhere else on the golf course our ball can be other than the penalty area, we have met that standard. Now we can proceed under any of these options to take relief for a ball in the penalty area. Once we put a ball into play with this knowledge of virtual certainty standard and we've used one of these penalty area relief options, the ball we've put into play with that relief is now the ball in play. Our original ball, even if we find it later, even if we find it within our 3-minute search time, that ball is no longer in play and it must not be played. So I mentioned before that two of our yellow penalty area has 2 relief options. Our red penalty area has 3 relief options. And the first one we're going to see in both, so it shares both for yellow and red, is just stroke and distance. And simply, it's just going back to where our previous stroke was made from. So if we hit the ball from a teeing area into a penalty area or from somewhere in the fairway into a penalty area, all we're going to do under penalty of stroke and distance is just go back to where that previous stroke was made from and put a ball into play depending on what area of the golf course we are in. So that is going to cost us 1 penalty stroke just to simply go back to where we last made a shot from. Our second option with yellow penalty areas, and this is really the fundamental option for a yellow penalty area. We still have it in red penalty areas, but this is really the fundamental option for a yellow penalty area, is just back on the line relief. And back on the line relief, I feel like leads to a little bit of confusion with some people. Some people might not fully understand what the option is telling you to do or where you're dropping the ball with back on the line relief. But the easy way to think of back on the line relief is just going straight back on a line and you're keeping the point that the ball last crossed the penalty area in between the flag and where we're going to drop on that line. So if we look at our diagram that's on the screen, that yellow penalty area that we see, that point X on that line, that point X is the spot that the ball last crossed the penalty area. And if we start at that flagstick and we start to draw a straight line from the flagstick to the point where we last crossed the penalty area, and then continuing that straight line straight back, all we're going to do is figure out a point on the line to drop straight back from where we last crossed the penalty area, and we're going to drop the ball on that line. When we're using back on the line relief, our relief area, and really the important part of this is we're going to have to drop on the line with back on the line relief. And we covered this a little bit in our last conversation with free relief, and we had some options for an abnormal course condition going back on the line. But the key here with back on the line is we're choosing a point to drop on that line. With the 2019 rules, we used to get a club length off of the line to then create a relief area to drop the golf ball. With 2023 rules going forward, we're dropping on the line. Once we've figured out a point to drop on the line and we know that point, and we drop the ball on that line, that's when our relief area is created with this relief option. So once we drop the ball on the line, we get a relief area that's 1 club length that goes in any direction, and it can encompass any area of the golf course except for the same penalty area we just took relief from. So once we've dropped a ball with back on the line relief and we've dropped it on that line, and once it hits the ground, the ball can roll in 1 club length in any direction, even closer to the hole. And as long as it stays within that 1 club length of the point we've dropped on the line, then we have completed taking relief. We have dropped in our appropriate relief area for back on the line relief. When we get to red penalty areas, we just get this 1 extra option with lateral relief with red penalty areas. This is a red penalty area only option. But it simply is just taking that same point where we last crossed the edge of the penalty area. And then we're going to create a relief area that is 2 club lengths from that point, no closer to the hole than the reference point. And then it's, again, just like with back in the line, it could be in any area of the course we're dropping in, except for the same penalty area we just dropped. So when we're taking relief from a penalty area, whether it's yellow, red, any option we're choosing, we got to drop outside that penalty area we just took relief from. We're making that conscious choice to take our ball from the penalty area and take relief somewhere else. So that means we have to drop somewhere else. We can't drop in that same penalty area we just took relief from. Questions about any of our relief options for a ball that is in a penalty area, red or yellow? George, is there anything in the chat?
Nothing in the chat as of the moment.
Okay. Just make sure. We can always come back if anyone has any quick questions about any of our 17-1 relief options. So for this next portion here with 17-2, let's just pretend, let's make a scenario here where we have chosen to, we have a ball in a penalty area. We have chosen to play that ball as it lies. We're not going to immediately take relief here because maybe it's a penalty area that doesn't have a lot of water in it or no water at all. Or maybe it's just barely inside the red line before it gets to the water and we have a playable shot and we think we can get a club on it and we're gonna play the ball as it lies and see what happens. So in this scenario with the first part of 17-2, we have a ball that is played from the penalty area and it's going to come to rest in that same penalty area or possibly another penalty area. For the first part here, let's just pretend it comes to rest in the same penalty area. We couldn't get it out of the penalty area with that stroke. Now what do we do? So even though we've made a stroke from the penalty area, we chose to play the ball as it lies, even though we've made that choice, we're still going to have all of our relief options available to us that we had in 17-1. We're still going to have all of those relief options available to us with our new situation here with our ball still in the penalty area. So we see a diagram there that in the penalty area, we have a shot that was played from point A. Now went to point B in the same penalty area. In this scenario, the ball never left the penalty area at all. So we went from point A to point B, stayed in the same penalty area, never left the penalty area to begin with. So again, we have all of our same normal relief options. We can take lateral relief if it's a red penalty area from where we last crossed the penalty area originally. We can go back on the line using the point where we last crossed the penalty area from our original shot going into the penalty area. So we still have those two options. The only option that really changes here is stroke and distance changes because now we've made a stroke. So if we choose to use our stroke and distance option from that ball played from point A to point B, the stroke and distance option is going to take us back to point A where we played the ball from the penalty area. So that's the only option that's really changed here. The only thing that we have now is we have an extra option where we can choose to play the ball from out where we made our last stroke outside the penalty area. The way I like to think about this option is it's kind of super stroke and distance here. So like we see in our diagram there, that option that's circled there, option 4, if we played a shot from the teeing area of that hole, and then it went into the penalty area, and then we played from point A to point B, like I just kind of described, well, the normal stroke and distance option only gets us back to point A in the penalty area. But if we want to use an extra relief option under 17-2, we can choose to now go back to the last place we made a stroke from outside the penalty area. That is going, in this case, it would be going back to our teeing area or going back to wherever our last stroke from outside the penalty area was made. In this case, this extra relief option is still only costing us 1 penalty stroke to go back to this spot outside the penalty area. So all of these options that we just laid out in that diagram, they're all still only costing 1 penalty stroke. There's a lot of text here, so I'm just going to or just going to give you a little bit of the overview here with this wall of text that's on this screen. So if we then if we went back to point A after playing to point B in the penalty area, and we take that stroke and distance relief and we drop the ball in the penalty area, then maybe we decided, hey, that was a stupid choice to begin with. I don't think I can get this shot out again. We still have all of those relief options available to us. So we can still then use the lateral relief option, or we can go back on the line, or we can go back to the point where we last hit outside the penalty area. The only problem is this is now going to cost 2 penalty strokes total. Because once we've dropped that ball under stroke and distance back at point A, but then we've now chosen to do something else, we're still going to have to take that penalty stroke for dropping a ball at point A under stroke and distance. We're not just going to be able to get out of that choice that we made. So important to know that if we have played a ball from a penalty area and it doesn't leave the penalty area, and we're choosing to now take relief, what we do next, it's really important to figure out what we're going to do next before we go start dropping golf balls. If you drop a ball under stroke and distance and it's still in the penalty area, and then we decide to take further relief, all this is really saying is it's just going to cost you a total of 2 penalty strokes. When our ball's in a penalty area, we're not going to get relief from an abnormal course condition under 16. There's no relief for embedded balls, also under 16. And we can't take any unplayable balls in penalty areas. When our ball is in that area of the golf course, the only options we have available to us are either play as it lies, or we're going to use one of our 17-1 relief options to take the ball somewhere else. So this is all that 17-3 is telling us, that when our ball's in a penalty area, we have no relief under any other rules other than 17. Let's go back. Questions just about 17 to be, and in general, anything with 17-1, 2, or 3. George, do we have anything in the chat that is relating to 17-1, 2, or 3?
We had a few questions in the chat. I think 1 or 2 was left over from our first topic, but Jim asks if you could sort of speak on dropping zones.
Sure, yeah. So with any of our 17-1 options, with stroke and distance, back on the line, and lateral relief for red penalty areas, those are all the standard options for a penalty area relief. There's times where a committee might give you a drop zone as a additional option under a local rule. So and anytime that there's a drop zone available to use that the committee is authorized, that's always going to be an additional option to any of those relief options under 17-1, 2, or 3. So anytime there's a drop zone available that the committee has made available, it's also going to cost 1 penalty stroke to use that drop zone and to drop a ball under that rule in that drop zone. So the important thing to know with drop zones is they're always an additional option to what you already have available under 17-1. Hopefully that answers the question there.
Yeah, we have 2 more if you have time, but Tom
Sure.
asks, can you drop a ball on the green from a penalty area?
If you're using lateral relief, which is for me, this is really the only way I could ever see this happening, is with a red penalty area, and then choosing to use the lateral relief option. It's possible that if for some reason, if those drawing out your 2 club lengths from where you last crossed the penalty area, for some reason, there's a portion of those 2 club lengths that are no closer to the hole, that are part of the putting green, that maybe the line or the stakes have been drawn so close to the edge of a putting green that it is possible. But it is possible that if some part of your relief area encompasses the putting green, you could possibly drop on the putting green, as long as it's no closer to the hole than where you last crossed that penalty area.
Super. And then Shona asks, after dropping on the line 1 club in any direction, what happens if it rolls closer to the hole? Is that okay?
So as long as once you drop on the line, even if it rolls closer to the hole, as long as it stays within 1 club length of where the ball was dropped on the line, it's going to be okay. So the ball can roll in any direction, north, south, east, west, wherever it rolls, as long as it stays within one club length of where the ball was dropped on the line. We're going to treat that ball as if it's still in the relief area. So good question.
Good. And we actually have one just come in from Tom while you're talking, and he asks, "Can I play from the drop zone if it is closest to the hole from where it last crossed the penalty area?"
So when a committee makes a drop zone available and as an additional option under a local rule, the committee is placing that drop zone wherever it sees fit. So if the committee has chosen to put that drop zone closer to the hole, the committee has authorized you to use that drop zone, then wherever that drop zone is and you're going to drop there, then that's going to be okay. That's, like I said, it's wherever that committee places that drop zone, the committee's authorizing you to drop there. So should be okay as long as the committee has authorized it.
Great. Well, I think that's all we have for now.
Okay. Like we're doing pretty good on time here. We're just a little bit under halfway done, but we'll move into Rule 18 now, which encompasses something we've already talked about in the previous rule, stroke and distance. I'll talk about some balls lost or out of bounds. And then the majority of Rule 18, I feel like, is encompassed with provisional golf balls. So we'll first look at two different definitions in our rules, lost or out of bounds. 18.1, penalty is stroke and distance. 18.2 talks about balls lost or out of bounds. And then possibly one of my favorite rules in the book, 18.3, deals with provisional balls. So there's our outline for this next Rule 18. Two definitions to start off with. We have a definition of lost. The definition of lost, even though there's a lot of words that start with it, to sum up the definition of lost, all it is that when you or your partner or your caddy or your partner's caddy, once you start searching for that golf ball, you have 3 minutes to find it. Once those 3 minutes expire at 3 minutes and 0 seconds and 0 milliseconds, and 0 nanoseconds, it is 3:00:00:00. Once that 3 minutes hits and you have not found that golf ball, the golf ball has become lost. So a lot of text just to say a simple thing that you have 3 minutes before you or any of your affiliated persons start to search for that golf ball. You got to find it within that 3 minutes. The definition of out of bounds. So it really just talks about where we have areas of the golf course and we have things that are not part of the golf course. So the area outside of the boundary edge that the committee has defined, all of those areas are considered out of bounds. Anything that is inside our boundary edge that the committee has defined, those are part of the golf course and those are going to be treated as inbounds. Just like we saw with penalty areas, that boundary edge of the golf course extends both up above the ground and down below it. So we have that glass window, like I like to imagine when we have a line on the ground or a wall or stakes or a fence, that glass window just goes up and down along that boundary to define where the golf course starts and stops. So a couple examples there on the right-hand side of the screen where we see some stakes being used to define a boundary and a line on the ground being used to define a boundary, and a few different examples of when a ball is inbounds and when a ball is out of bounds. As long as some portion of that golf ball is touching the part of the golf course or an area of the golf course, we're going to treat that golf ball as being inbounds. When we're using a stake or a fence or a wall or something like that to define the boundary edge, we're going to use the inside course side points of those stakes or fence posts. And then we're going to define that as our boundary. We're going to treat those as boundary objects, and the boundary objects are going to be out of bounds. They are not part of the golf course. Same thing with a line on the ground. When a line is being used, we're going to use the course side edge of that line, and the line itself is out of bounds. At any time when our ball is in play, we can use stroke and distance. It is an option that is available to you at any time between you taking your first shot on a hole and you picking up that golf ball out of the hole. So when you are in the middle of the fairway, if you want to take stroke and distance and go back to the teeing area for some reason, you are 100% allowed to do that under 18.1. That is why it is bolded at any time. So there's never a time where you are not permitted to use stroke and distance. It is one of the very few alwayses in the book. It is always available to you. So you can always throw yourself one penalty stroke and go back to where you last hit the golf ball. Two times where you have a requirement to use stroke and distance. When you have a lost ball, that's a ball that is not found within 3 minutes. You are required to go back and play a ball under stroke and distance. Same thing with a ball out of bounds. When you have a ball that is at rest out of bounds, when it is outside of the boundary edge of the course, you are required to go back under stroke and distance. When I think of playing a golf hole from the first tee shot to when you hole out on the putting green, I think of a golf hole being played as a progression of strokes. And those progressions of strokes make up a chain, kind of, like chain links. Each stroke is another piece on the chain. Anytime we have a ball that is lost or out of bounds, that chain has been broken. And the only way to rejoin that chain back together and keep playing that progression of strokes to the hole is to use stroke and distance. And again, going back to where we last had that chain joined, where the last stroke was made. We got a ball that's lost or out of bounds. We're taking stroke and distance relief. We got to go back to where we last hit, unless we are virtually certain that we can use another rule at our disposal. So if we are getting to the end of our 3-minute search, but we're searching near a penalty area, and for some reason we have this virtual certainty that we're searching, we can't find it, but we're thinking that our ball may be lost in that penalty area, and we can get to that virtual certainty standard. Or if it was moved by an outside influence and there was some other reason we couldn't find this golf ball, if we can get to a virtual certainty standard of what happened to our golf ball and it's not found within that 3 minutes, we may be able to use another rule at our disposal rather than stroke and distance and put a ball into play in some other way. That is one exception to this rule when we have a lost ball. Any quick questions on stroke and distance relief, or when a ball is lost or out of bounds? We can always come back to this at the end of 18 here in a few minutes. Really, the heart of 18 here, which encompasses most of the text in 18, which is provisional golf balls 18.3. Really talking about when a provisional golf ball is allowed, what we need to do to play a provisional golf ball, and then when does that provisional golf ball either become the ball in play, or when do we have to just pick it up and proceed with another golf ball instead. So anytime our ball may be lost outside of a penalty area or out of bounds, or we don't know where our golf ball might be, and we don't necessarily have that virtual certainty standard yet for a penalty area or something else, in order to save time or to save ourselves the walk of shame back to the teeing area or wherever we last hit a golf ball from, we can play another golf ball provisionally under the penalty of stroke and distance. The only thing we have to do before we do that is we got to announce that we're doing a provisional golf ball, or we got to announce the play of a provisional golf ball first. So if we know that we're going to play a provisional golf ball, we typically have to make that announcement to somebody, whether it's a caddy or opponent in match play, another player in stroke play. We have to announce that we're playing that provisional golf ball. And we have to do it to clearly indicate that the golf ball is being played as a provisional. So typically you'll just tell someone, hey, I'm going to play a provisional, or I'm going to play this one just in case that ball is lost, or I'm going to play, I think that ball might be out of bounds. I better play another one just in case. We have to clearly indicate that we're playing that ball as a provisional. Back here for just 1 second. It's not enough just to say, I'm going to play another one, or I'm going to play again, or I'm going to reload. Those things aren't necessarily clear enough to state that we're playing a provisional golf ball. So we really have to make sure we're either using the word provisional or clearly indicating it otherwise that we're playing a golf ball provisionally. Once we play a provisional golf ball, there's a chance for us to play that golf ball more than once. There's some times where we might have our original ball that could potentially be 200 yards down the fairway, or it could be 200 yards, maybe out of bounds. But then we only play our provisional ball 100 yards forward from our teeing area or wherever we need to play from. There's a chance that we can continue to play that provisional golf ball and it not lose its status as a provisional golf ball. The only requirement is we're playing it or continuing to play this provisional from a spot that is farther from the hole where our original estimated to be. So I really like this diagram a lot. It outlines this situation really well. We have a player that's played a tee shot from the teeing area. That original ball, it's maybe estimated or possible that it's in those bushes, and we'll just call that 200 yards down the fairway. Well, we then hit our provisional ball to point A, that is 150 yards down the fairway. And it's possible that once we get to point A where our provisional ball is, we're going to be able to make another stroke of that ball and it still keep its status as a provisional golf ball. Maybe we play that ball from point A to point B. And even though it's now resting at point B, we can still go and begin our 3-minute search for the original golf ball over there in those bushes. It hasn't lost its status as a provisional golf ball yet. Now, if I go from point A to point B, and maybe let's just say I skip going and searching for that original golf ball, and I just go hit that ball at point B. Now we have a change in status of that golf ball. Now we're going to see something different. Just like I go to point B, I never went over to go search for my original golf ball. I'm just going to completely forget about it. Maybe it's just so deep in those bushes, I just want to totally lose that golf ball and I don't want to go play it. Well, if I now go to point B and I hit that golf ball at point B, that's a closer distance to the hole than where my original was estimated to be. Now my provisional ball has become the ball in play. My original ball, whether it's then found or not, has now become a wrong ball and it is not the ball in play anymore. Or if I went to go search for that original ball, search for 3 minutes, never found it. Once that 3 minutes hits, now my provisional ball has switched its status and it has now become the ball in play because my original ball is now lost because I never found it or I discovered that it was out of bounds. So those are the two ways that my provisional ball switches its status from being a provisional to now being the ball in play. Any questions on, that was kind of the short, quick version of provisionals, but any quick questions on provisional balls?
We just had a note from Jim. He was hoping you could clarify. A player can play a provisional ball if he or she is not virtually certain that their first ball went into a penalty area? Question mark.
Correct. So if we hit a shot from the teeing area and it travels somewhere where it could potentially be lost or out of bounds, it could maybe be in a penalty area, but we don't have that 95% sure that it is going to be in a penalty area or it is in a penalty area. Without that knowledge or virtual certainty, let's just say we just think the ball is lost or out of bounds somewhere else. That's when we have the ability to hit a provisional ball. If we hit a ball from the teeing area and we see it go into a penalty area, or we see it potentially go towards a penalty area, and we might be able to reach that virtual certainty standard of 95% in the penalty area. Well, at that point, we've lost our ability to hit a provisional. Because if we have that virtual certainty standard or we have knowledge that the ball's in the penalty area, then we can only proceed with the penalty area rules or to play the balls it lies. So really, provisional balls are only for times where it could be lost or out of bounds or somewhere other than a penalty area.
So a follow-up question from Tom. What if I hit my ball 50 yards and see it come to rest? I don't want to play it. What are my options?
So in this case, when we know the location of a golf ball, really our only option is to go play that golf ball as it lies, or we can play the ball under stroke and distance and go back to where we last hit from. The provisional there is really only a tool when we're uncertain of the outcome of our previous stroke. When we have certainty that we know where our previous stroke is and we have knowledge of where it lies on the golf course, the provisional is not really there to serve its purpose anymore. In that, like I said, in that case, we're either going to play the ball as it lies in the location we know where it's at, or we're going to proceed under stroke and distance, or we might use one of our unplayable ball options that we're going to see here as we wrap up under 19. Anything else there, George?
That's all we've got right now, unless any hands are raised or anyone has any last minute ones.
So doing good on time here. This is our final rule we're going to cover tonight, unplayable ball, rule 19. Just like the other penalty area relief rules, they all have 3 sections, which is kind of a unique thing. You know, see a lot of consistency with our subsections in the rules of golf, but all the penalty area relief rules have a 19 or a .1, .2, and a .3, which is kind of interesting. But here's our overview of unplayable ball. Key thing with an unplayable ball is that we can decide to take an unplayable anywhere on the golf course except for a penalty area. As we know from 17, once we have a ball in a penalty area, we got to either play it as lies or proceed with one of those rules. Anywhere on the golf course, we can decide to take an unplayable ball. That's totally our choice. Speaking on that choice, the player is the only person who can decide to take an unplayable ball. The caddy cannot make that choice. The opponent cannot make that choice. Another player in stroke play cannot make that choice. It is only the player's choice. They are the only person who can decide to treat their ball as an unplayable ball. Just like with penalty areas, we have a couple options at our disposal with unplayable balls. Stroke and distance is always an option, as we know. You can just go back and decide to play it from where the previous stroke was made. See our friend back on the line again with unplayable ball. We're choosing to drop on that line, going straight back from the hole. And we got to keep the hole and where we're dropping on the line. What we got to keep in between us this time is where the golf ball lies on the golf course. We saw in Rule 17 with penalty areas, we were keeping that point where the ball last crossed the penalty area in between our 2 points. This time we're using where the ball lies on the golf course as the point we're keeping in between the hole and where we drop. And then we have our lateral relief option. 2 club lengths from the spot of the original ball, no closer to the hole. And those 2 club lengths can go into any area of the golf course that they decide to go into. So 3 options there. We see on the diagram, 3 options there for an unplayable ball. They're all going to cost the player 1 penalty stroke to do so. We have some relief options for when a ball is in a bunker for an unplayable. We have all the same relief options we just saw, stroke and distance, back on the line, and lateral relief. With our lateral relief option, if we're using it in a bunker, the lateral relief option has to stay within the bunker. So even though you might be able to measure 2 club lengths from the ball to a point outside the bunker, if you're using the lateral relief option for a ball in a bunker, you got to stay confined to that area of the golf course with this one. So that's one caveat to our relief option. And same thing with back on the line. If you're just using standard back on the line relief for 1 penalty stroke in a bunker, you got to stay in that same bunker. We do have an extra relief option for a ball in the bunker. If we want to use that back on the line relief option, but we want to continue that line outside the bunker, we can do so, but it's going to cost us an extra penalty stroke to go outside the bunker on that line. So we're going to have to go a total of 2 penalty strokes for back on the line relief, continuing outside the bunker with an unplayable golf ball. So something to think about if you're not a very good bunker player, or you just don't want to play from the bunker at all. You just totally want to just leave the bunker alone. If you want to cough up the 2 penalty strokes and go back on the line outside, you have that option to do so. Any questions about any of the parts of 19 unplayable ball?
We had one question just going back to provisional balls, Lewis, if you want to address that.
Sure.
So Shona asks, on a provisional ball, what if I hit my ball towards a penalty area, but just beyond the penalty area is the general area? However, I'm not 100% sure or 95% sure if the ball cleared the penalty area. Am I allowed to take a provisional?
Yeah, so good question there. So if we hit a ball towards a penalty area, but there's a chance that the ball could be somewhere outside the penalty area, or it could be lost, or it might have cleared the penalty area and gone somewhere else. The point being that we don't exactly have that knowledge or virtual certainty standard that the ball is in that penalty area. In that case, we do have the option to hit a provisional ball for that shot. As we're searching for that golf ball, or as we walk up there and we begin the search, if for some reason during the search we get that knowledge that the ball is in the penalty area, or we reach that virtual certainty standard of 95% that the ball is in the penalty area during that search, then we open up the option to us to use some of those Rule 17 options. But when we're deciding to hit that provisional, if we don't have that knowledge of virtual certainty standard yet, or we can't meet it before we decide to play the provisional, then you can still use the provisional ball option. It's just that before you play the provisional, if you already have met that 95% virtual certainty standard, that the ball is in the penalty area and there's a less than 5% chance it could be somewhere else, then that's where your provisional ball option goes away. Hopefully I answered that question and didn't muddy it up even more. Any other questions about anything penalty area relief? This could be about anything 17, 18, or 19, anything we didn't cover, or anything we want to go back to, or anything maybe didn't click, or someone needs some more explanation on it. But any other further questions about any of our penalty area relief rules? Either drop them in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. Give it maybe a couple minutes here if anyone's thinking of a question. Let's see. I think we do have one in the chat from Tom Clays. When can you drop in the penalty area? So there's only a few times where you're permitted to drop within a penalty area, typically under 17.1. Like I mentioned before, when we're taking penalty area relief, we're making that choice to take our ball from the penalty area and go somewhere else. There's really only a few times where you can drop in a penalty area. If you're taking an unplayable ball from somewhere in the general area or somewhere else, and you're going back on the line, and that line takes you into a penalty area, you can drop in a penalty area at that point. If you have a dangerous animal condition in the penalty area while your ball is in the penalty area, there's a chance to take free relief from that dangerous animal condition, but it's staying in the penalty area. And then the other time I can think of is if you're taking back on the line of relief from penalty area A, and 50 yards backwards is penalty area B, and it's on your line, you could potentially drop in penalty area B while taking relief from penalty area A, because it's a different penalty area. So it's not typical that you would be dropping the ball in a penalty area, but there are times in the rules where it could happen. Good clarification there, Mike, as well in the chat. Taking stroke and distance. If you hit from a penalty area and it stays within the same penalty area or goes somewhere else, under stroke and distance, you could be dropping within that same penalty area as well. Thanks for the clarification there, Mike. Any other questions as we wrap up? Pretty good on time tonight, just under an hour. Again, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know I say this every time, but really appreciate you taking the time to join us to learn more about the rules of golf. We always like sharing our rules knowledge and sharing some rules education with CGA members or anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about the rules of golf. So we really do appreciate you taking the time and learning a little bit more about the rules of golf. So appreciate that as well. One last question as it's hopping off here. Tom Clay's asked about regression. Regression is essentially what 17.2 covers in the penalty area rule, where a ball is either played from a penalty area and doesn't go out, or goes to another penalty area, from penalty area A to penalty area B. All regression is really describing is you're regressing back either to where the ball previously was, or you're regressing back on the golf course to where you were outside the penalty area. So really all the stuff we covered in 17.2 with playing a ball in the penalty area from point A to point B, and then having to go backwards and use one of your other options you previously had, that's really what regression is covering, is everything there in 17.2. We'll go ahead and see some people drop